All right. So welcome back to Slots and Locks. I'm Tim.
And this is Mello, the podcast where we explore gaming, internet culture, psychology, and the systems that shape how people think and behave.
All right. We're doing something a little bit different today. We're headed to Argentina to talk about one of the greatest stories in modern sports.
And this is not just like a football story, not just a World Cup story,
Yeah, it's more of a broader story about persistence.
and a story about expectations, I would say.
Yeah, and ultimately a story about hope because nearly 2 decades, one of the greatest athletes in history kept hearing the same question.
Will Messi or can Messi win the World Cup?
Well, he did, but spoiler. But today we'll explore what that journey teaches us about probability, belief, uncertainty, themes that I think keep resonating what we've talked about for probably the past month or two, and why people keep pursuing goals even when success isn't guaranteed. And as always, this channel focuses on the psychology, design, culture of gaming and entertainment. These discussions are educational and analytical and not intended to promote any real money at all.
Yeah, so let's get into it.
Shall we? All right. So let's start off with a little gratitude reflection. So something I'm grateful for is perseverance. It's easy to admire successful people after they achieve something, but we see the trophy, the accomplishment, the headline, or the celebration. But what we rarely see are the years where nothing seems to be working. The setbacks, doubts, the moments where quitting would have been easier.
Yeah, I'm kind of at that moment. No, I'm kidding. No, and I think that's especially true today because we're constantly surrounded by the highlight reels. You see all the good happening, you rarely see the bad. Social media is essentially made to kind of show off and show the good. It rarely shows the process, it rarely shows the failure, and most meaningful achievements take much longer than people expect. And I think the hardest part often isn't so much the work itself, it's continuing to believe when the outcome remains uncertain.
Yeah, which is exactly why Messi's story resonates with so many people around the world. So, kind of going back, I mean, it's a longer story, but we'll keep it brief. When people talk about Messi today, they usually start with the ending, the World Cup trophy, the celebrations in Argentina, the images of him finally lifting up the one trophy that escaped him for so long. But what makes the story, frankly, I think remarkable is everything that happened before that moment. Messi made his World Cup debut in 2006 as a teenager, and almost immediately people started calling him the future of football. As the years passed, he won league titles, Champions League. I always forget, don't know how to exactly pronounce that. Is it Ballon d'Or awards? How you pronounce it?
Oh, yeah, the Ballon d'Or.
There you go. Ballon d'Or awards, scoring records, individual honors, almost everything an athlete could possibly win. Yet one thing remained missing, as we all know, the World Cup.
He was 35 years old when he won the World Cup. So over time, that missing trophy became the entire conversation. It's interesting how people work, right? Messi had accomplished probably more than 99.9% of what professional football players ever dreamed of. Yet many people defined his legacy around that one thing he hadn't achieved. I guess in a lot of ways, it's sort of like the Charles Barkley effect, right? And I think as time goes
Yep.
on, that pressure kept growing. Every World Cup became another chapter in the same story, right? Can he finally do it? Is this finally going to be the year? Is Argentina finally going to pull through? So I think in large part he was carrying the expectations of an entire nation every 4 years. Seems pretty stressful.
I would say so. And then you have these heartbreak years, like the 2014 World Cup felt like it finally might happen. Argentina reached the final. Messi was at the peak of his powers. The country believed, the football world believed. Then Germany scored in extra time. And just like that, the dream, frankly, just disappeared.
I think what makes that story even more fascinating is that this wasn't just the end of the disappointment, right? So Argentina lost back-to-back Copa Americana finals, and in 2016 another heartbreaking defeat where announced his retirement from international football. And for a moment it seemed like the story just might end there.
And honestly, nobody would have blamed him. He already won everything that he could have possibly won. And eventually he decided to come back. And that's part of the story that I think people connect with. Not the talent, not the trophies, the decision to keep going. Now, I think this is where the story gets a little bit bigger than football. And the question is, why do people keep pursuing difficult goals after repeated setbacks? Why do entrepreneurs keep building companies? Why do athletes keep competing? Why do creators keep publishing videos when no one's watching?
Ouch.
Oh, to
Because
us, right?
Because I think at the end of the day, speaking from a personal perspective, hope isn't really about certainty, right? It exists because uncertainty exists. The successiveness isn't guaranteed. Hope obviously wouldn't be necessary, but the entire concept depends on the fact that the outcome remains unknown when you're in the process of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting way to think about it. Hope isn't believing something will happen, it's believing something could happen.
And right now, what I'm hoping to believe is that there's an egg salad sandwich made for me upstairs, but I know that's not going to happen. So anyway, but I digress. That difference is incredibly important because probability and hope are not the same thing.
Yeah, and I think one reason I think the story resonates so deeply in Argentina is because uncertainty is something many Argentinians understand well. The country has experienced economic instability, inflation, political changes, financial uncertainty. Multiple generations have had to adapt to circumstances that they couldn't fully control.
Yeah, I think economically, Argentina is sort of a disaster, right? Just from one generation to the next, it's just a different form of a disaster.
Yeah.
But with that disasters comes tremendous resilience, right? And people always continue to build businesses, they start families, they pursue opportunities, they plan for the future. Hope somehow, even in the midst of all of that adversity, survives the uncertainty. And in some ways, I think that's one of the defining characteristics of Argentina itself.
Yeah, I think which is why sports become so powerful. For 90 minutes, the entire country shares the same dream, the same possibility, the same hope, which is wonderful to see on the pitch. And then kind of transitioning, I find one thing fascinating about the World Cup is that long before the first match kicks off, people already started predicting the outcome. Fans make predictions, journalists make predictions, analysts build models, sportsbook create odds, prediction markets create prices. Everyone's trying to answer the same question: who's going to win?
Yeah, what's interesting in all those systems is they're attempting to somehow try to measure uncertainty. They're trying to, obviously, it's a prediction market. So, yeah, duh. But, and they're trying to estimate the future. They're actually putting monetary value on it. And those estimates are constantly changing. You have one injury could change the whole thing, one upset could change the whole thing, a bad draw could change the whole thing, another team just having a hot streak could change the whole thing, you know? And the market is just continuously updating its beliefs.
Yeah, and I think if show at the poly market, if you looked at the start of the World Cup, I believe Spain was favored, then France, and England and Argentina. And now it was close. Spain was somewhere around 18% favored. France was around 15, England around 11, and Argentina 9%. Today it's 36% France and 19% Argentina. So it's incredible how these things can swing. And I think Argentina, going back to as a country, is the perfect example. For years, people believed Messi was the greatest player in the world, but that didn't automatically mean Argentina would win the World Cup. The perception and the probability weren't always aligned.
There's so many people on the pitch, right? Messi is just but one guy. So I don't know. I know nothing about soccer. I've never played organizational soccer. I barely watch. I don't understand the rules. My wife and I argue whether it's offsides or they call it onside. I still don't even understand that rule. Do you
Both
understand the
sides.
rule? Understand the
Yes,
rule?
of course.
Have you played
Yes.
organized soccer?
So if the basically the offensive team, the people that have the ball, they can't. There's a almost imaginary line between the goalie and the defenders, and the offensive player can't get between the goalie and the defender. The only time they can get past that is when the ball is actually kicked. Once it leaves the person that's kicking the foot, then they could run in between the defender and the goalie. But if they leave before then and the ball hasn't been kicked yet, then it's an offside.
So the ball has to be kicked before they can get in between the defender and the goalie.
Correct.
And
And
therefore,
it's not kicked. If it's not kicked and they run between them, it's offside.
so whereas hockey, same thing applies, but there is a line and they can't go over that line.
Until the puck goes across.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, similar concept, but slightly different. But yeah, same concept.
Man.
Makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fairly simple concept, actually. I mean, to be honest with you.
Now the question is whether you argue with your wife over and what side are you arguing? The
I
right
don't
side
know.
or the wrong side?
Well, no. I mean, I see on this. It seemed like on the TV they would write onside.
No,
I should.
onside would be it's not offsides. That's all they're saying. Like they were
Oh,
actually
okay.
on sides, like maybe they reviewed it and they were like, no, they were actually onside. Like it wasn't a
Okay.
penalty. That's what they'll do.
So yeah, so I generally watch TV without the sound on. I just watch the words. So that probably they probably would explain. The one exception is when they score, and I always gotta. That's what you wait for the announcer, right? How long can he say goal in one breath? I feel. I feel
Yes,
from my
that's a big
perspective.
part. Celebration, right?
Yeah. I think that kind of brings us to our next point. And people will often confuse hope with probability. Like, for instance, Congo, right, took a 1-0 lead against England before Tommy Kane decided he was going to start kicking some ass, right? So, in that respect, hope says, I want this to happen. And then Congo's up 1-0. The probability said, here's what's most likely going to happen. And Tommy Kane starts kicking ass. He has the most coolest name, too, for a good player, right? Tommy Kane. Almost villainous, really. And I think this is what's great about the World Cup is this is where those two ideas collide.
Have you heard of that player in Argentina? His first name is Best and his last name is Kicker.
Best kicker. My favorite player in Argentina is the guy. I think his name is McDonald.
First name Old.
No, is I think they have a guy named McDonald.
Yeah, but I think Kane is a pretty cool name. Yeah. And I think one thing personally I find a little interesting is that after Argentina eventually won in 22 and 2, yeah,
Sorry, McAllister. His name's McAllister.
yeah, good name. But Argentina won 22. Obviously, they're favored now. I assume everyone knows they won in 2022, which was a huge relief and a great thing for Messi and the country of Argentina as a whole. But many people started talking about as though it was inevitable, as though the ending was always written, as though Messi was always destined to lift that trophy.
Was that the first time he came back after he quit?
Yeah, and he won it that year.
Okay.
Well, 4 years ago.
4 years ago. So yeah, that's one of the most common mistakes people make when they think about probability. Once we know the outcome, we then start rewriting the story. So we convince ourselves the result was obvious, and before it happened, it wasn't obvious at all. And that's why we watch. To kind of expand on this a little bit more, you see this with prediction markets in elections, and people wonder why the prediction market has a guy listed at 25% when he's doing much better, and then it goes to 1% when things start to happen. And people say, typically, from what I've read, it's impossible. How do you go from 25% winning to one? And those people just fundamentally don't understand the math or the mechanic of a prediction market. And it always makes me kind of giggle at their frustration. I think
Wow.
they
Good.
equate I think they equate it with a poll or something, and it's not a poll.
Well, I think people don't understand statistics in general, right? Odds and probabilities and things like that. There's always a risk to losing, and there's always a risk to be on the wrong side of it. And if you think about the World Cup and every tournament began effectively with uncertainty. Yeah, there's favorites and stuff like that, but it changes. Every match began with uncertainty. Every penalty kick started with uncertainty. And the fact that ending feels inevitable doesn't really change how uncertain it was at the time. So I think we should go back to touch upon like the probability, the hope, and things like that. But I think we should go back to our framework a little bit. And really, to me, is like perception itself said that Messi was destined to win the World Cup and the greatest player on the generation, the chosen one, the future champion.
Probability, unfortunately, totally different story. It's that even the greatest players can lose, the best teams can fail, favorites get eliminated. And I think because of all the uncertainty and all the static, winning a World Cup is incredibly difficult, regardless of the odds.
And it makes me think of other underdogs that have won it, or I guess teams that were heavily favored. Back in the Miracle on Ice, the U.S. hockey team in Olympics beating Russia, or USSR, I guess at the time, was a huge underdog story. There's teams throughout history that defeat Goliath in a way. But the itself, I would say, is everything kind of in between. Tournament formats, youth development, coaching staffs, teammates, training systems, thousands of decisions made over nearly 2 decades.
Yeah, and I think people ultimately remember the trophy, right? The trophy is the result of the entire system working together over time.
Yeah, and
But
then one thing I'd be
but but
good.
but that's not really, I think, what humans truly love, though, right, Tim?
The trophy. Are you saying they love the journey, not the destination?
Um, yeah, the journey, the destination, I think, is expected, but I think The uncertainty is the joy, right? It's the trip.
It's funny.
No,
Wait,
if you look at major upsets, or if you look at Michael Jordan's Bulls or Mike Tyson in the 80s, you didn't, I think you didn't, there was a certain percentage of people who actually watch for the Bulls to win, but I think a larger percentage were hoping the Bulls would lose. And same with Mike Tyson. I mean, there is that, because the uncertainty of Mike Tyson winning was pretty almost always 90% plus. Same with the Bulls.
it's
Did the
funny how
Bulls
there's
ever?
those flips sometimes. No, Jordan 1 sticks. It was always funny where maybe the first Warriors, like the Golden State Warriors, when they won their championship, they were like these underdogs that came out of nowhere. No one expected to win. And everyone rooted for them. After you start winning a lot, people generally don't want to see you win anymore. But just if you take Michael Jordan, and for me, I'm sure other people might disagree with this, maybe younger generation. To me, Michael Jordan is the best basketball player of all time. And I think it's the point you just made where it's a team sport, but somehow he willed his team to win and never lost in the finals. It just seems absurd to me because it's so difficult to win. And I think football or soccer is even more complex because the game moves a lot slower versus there's a lot of scoring. But I think when it comes back to all of this, we're talking about kind of uncertainty and our general love of uncertainty. And so a thing we've talked about throughout the series is that humans are drawn towards uncertainty, not away from it.
Yeah, and I think the World Cup is one of those greatest examples ever, right? So if we knew the winner before the tournament started, I think people outside of their countries wouldn't be drawn toward it, right? But the excitement comes from not knowing. The excitement comes from, you know, me, not a big fan of soccer, obviously, but me going, oh my God, that's pretty exciting. And I notice one thing I get out of it is like when a goal happens, that's normally the TV's volume is off, but I see the goal, volume comes on, and the announcer. And soccer definitely has a lot of satisfaction. I think a lot of people say it's kind of boring because nothing happens for most of the time, but I think what the trigger is when that something does happen, it's euphoric, really, in a lot of ways.
It's monumental. I remember I was years ago, I think it was my first trip to England, and I actually went up and did a pub crawl with Ali Manning. Shout out to Ali. He took me this pub crawl. We watched the England game when Beckham was playing, and I don't think I realized what bended like Beckham really meant, but he hit this shot that was like, I don't know, 100 feet away, and he curled this thing over. It seemed like slow motion the way the ball was coming in and hit the top corner of the net. The goalie couldn't get to it, and it was like just the most amazing shot. The whole bar pub just went insane, and almost in that moment, I became a fan of Beckham. Just seeing that and feeling that energy. So it's the same with the World Cup. It's going through every upset. And funny enough, like Argentina is playing Cape Verde. I don't know when we're going to publish this, and maybe it might be an upset, but Cape Verde tied Spain, which was a huge upset. And the fact they're in this, they're a small African country, and they tied all three of the matches and advanced into the bracket stage. And seeing every comeback, England today, you just mentioned it, they came back from, I think, 1-0 down, came back and moved on. Every penalty shot, every last minute goal, like all these things are this uncertainty is the exciting part. And if you go take it back to games, the slot games, same type of thing. I think people love the win, but it's really the uncertainty of a slot game or a prediction market or sports betting or whatever it is. It's an excitement.
Yeah, do you know what the curved kick is called?
Tell me.
It's called the Magnus effect. It's named after Gustav Magnus, a German physicist who first described the phenomenon in the 1850s. So when a spinning object moves toward a fluid like air, it experiences a sideways force that curves its path. You knew I'd bring physics back into it, right?
Yeah, physics is math in a way, right?
But I think another thing what's happening, and I think it's going to happen more and more, and I can't remember who it was, but they were basically saying an African nation has never won the World Cup. You know that, right? You're seeing more and more, like Belgium had a lot of people play from the Congo over the years. And I think most of European countries did. But you're seeing more and more that they're actually representing their African country. So you're going to see more and more of this. And Africa will have a champion. I think somebody said probably within the next two or three, maybe even this one, World Cup. So Cape Verde, is that what it is?
Yep.
Do you even know?
Insanely much.
You even know it? I've actually never even heard of Cape Verde as a country.
It's an island off the northwest coast of Africa.
I know. I'm checking it
But
out
if
here.
I'm being honest, I think I had to look where it was. Senegal.
Oh wow, it's way off the coast.
Yeah, but
Cabo Verde. It's way off the coast. It's like almost it's 1/5 the way to Puerto Rico.
it is.
Well, it looks like it's a chain of islands. I don't know what the actual. Cool. I was this many years old. So I was this many years. Two things. So I was this many years old when I learned when I have to swim, I have to breathe out of my nose. And now that the existence of a Cape Verde exists. So yeah, cool.
Anyhow, I should say we should probably wish Argentina the best of luck. Although, and Messi for that matter, maybe they could win 2 World Cups in a row. But I will say what I love about Messi's story is it really reminds us that probability isn't destiny. Something can be unlikely without being impossible.
And yeah, and sometimes the most meaningful victories are the ones that take the longest, the ones that require patience. There are some stories I can think of, persistence, and the willingness to continue that journey despite the uncertainty, despite the previous failures. And I think that's a very unique human characteristic.
Yeah, because hope isn't about certainty; it's about possibility. We'd love to hear from you and hear a story from you as well. If you have a certain World Cup moment, drop us a comment. Tell us what you think. And also, what's something in your life that took longer than expected, but was ultimately worth pursuing?
Yeah, drop it in the notes. Where do you think Messi's World Cup victory ranks among the greatest stories in sports history, given he was 35 years old when that happened? We'd love to hear your thoughts. But before we go, Tim, what would you say is one of the biggest? It could either be the biggest upset, and we've already talked about Mike Tyson, but or the biggest team that didn't win a championship when you thought they should have.
I was going to joke and say the Miami Heat when LeBron had lost to the Mavericks, but I wouldn't say that was a huge upset. I think the Mavericks are a really good team. I don't know. Give me an example one.
So for me, and I'm strictly thinking about basketball. So in 1983, 84, I don't know, the Philadelphia 76ers won the championship, and they won pretty convincingly. They had Moses Malone, they had Daryl Dawkins, they had Julius Erving, and they somehow they didn't have lottery picks back then, but they had one of the first picks, and they picked Charles Barkley. And, obviously, if you look at that and think about that, you're like, wow, in the 80s, they're going to have a dynasty. Well, that didn't happen. And then fast forward, the same team, 76ers, they currently have Ben Simmons, who at the time was playing really well, Joel Embiid, who is probably one of the best players in the NBA, and they have the first pick in the draft. They end up taking Marquez Fultz, but they could have
Yeah.
Jason Tatum. So you can imagine eventually at one point in time, they would have had all of those players, Jason Tatum, and for a period of time, they also had Jimmy Butler. That would have been another dynasty potential in the making.
Yeah, and they got rid of Jimmy Butler and kept the other guy that didn't pan out. I'm forgetting his name, but I would say I didn't think about this is the undefeated Patriots losing to the New England Patriots losing to the New York Giants in the Super Bowl. That was unexpected. Yeah, everyone probably thought they were going to win. I was so stuck about that. I have a friend that's an annoying Patriots fan, so I was certainly happy with that one.
Annoying.
The Warriors when they won 73-9, although they had a lot of injuries and lost to the Raptors, I think the finals. But no, I was blowing to Cleveland that year. I think they blew a 3-1 lead. LeBron James had an amazing block, which was ridiculous. But there's a few teams that are definitely some heartbreaks. So
Yeah, maybe we should do like a story on is it persistence or is it maybe drive? Let's do a story on drive because I think and we'll incorporate a lot of statistics into it. Because if you look at like the average minutes played of NBA players because they're saving themselves, and that makes sense, but Michael Jordan played, I mean, they all did, like Michael Jordan, Karl Malone, Barkley, and the amounts of minutes they played during their prime, just freaking amazing. It was like 40, a game's 48 minutes, and they played like probably 44 of them, per game.
yeah, that's a tough one because I feel like the game was more physical back then too. So that's why he did have really long careers. Like Kareem lasting so long was pretty incredible. But like it was a tough age. I don't think their bodies physically handle it. And I think now the game is a little bit different, but it's probably smarter because they realize like we want to rest our stars or we want to keep them longer because they make more money. But I tell you, as a kid, if I ever went to the Bulls game, you guaranteed Michael Jordan's playing. But if you go to a game today, your star might not be playing. And that's frustrating if you paid a shitload of money for an NBA ticket.
No, 100%. And that's why I think the best thing of soccer is the substitution rule. I don't know what it is, but I know you have limited substitutions. But I think that's fantastic because, yeah, you do have. And I saw the last Argentina game, to tie it back into it, where Messi came off the bench when they were playing. The last game they were playing, I can't remember. But yeah, and he ended up scoring on I think it was a penalty kick. He did not. He did not do. Yeah, he did not do. It's funny. He did not do the Magnus effect because everybody was assuming he would be the curl. But what happened is it opened up a gap on the line, and he just basically kicked it through the gap. It's freaking classical Messi. Anyway.
All right. With that, definitely want to say good luck to Argentina as the World Cup continues. And
good luck to the USA, man.
Yeah, exactly. But we're talking about Messi and Argentina. But of course, we want the USA to win first. But yeah, good luck to Argentina as well. And subscribe, give us a comment. Yeah, if you have any ideas for a show, just let us know.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. We don't have to say gamble responsibly because we didn't talk about gambling.
There you go.
So just believe responsibly.
There you go.
You don't want to say that?
Yeah. Believe responsibility.